Welcome to Fast Effect. Actually jumping in the middle of the match here. Heather, no Infect creatures on board. Oh, sorry, she's got an Inkmoth Nexus on board, along with a Noble Hierarch, and then a Teferi resolving on the other side of the board for John, and that is going to complicate the Infect line in general. You're not going to be able to play your pump spells at instant speed. You're going to have to move all in pre-combat, so Teferi would be an issue. 2 Infect coming across, not clearing the Teferi. So probably 3 Infect, probably pumping with Pendelhaven and a trigger from Noble Hierarch. And now we have a Blighted Agent, which oddly enough does not change the clock here. It'll not be able to attack with Inkmoth while also getting an Exalted trigger. Noble very, very strong in Infect decks, basically giving the creature +2 damage, given that you're only doing 10 total damage with Infect. You know, if Noble Hierarch was printed to give the creature, +2/+1, that would see a heck of a lot more play, and that does make it a really strong card, even though it doesn't necessarily do more Infect damage on its own. It just has a ton of synergy with all those Infect creatures. Though I have seen Infect win before under Ensnaring Bridge due to Noble Hierarch team up, just swinging for like 4 a turn with 4 Noble Hierarchs out. We've got a Brainstorm getting met with a Spell Pierce, and Heather letting it go, which is a little surprising. Inkmoth standing up, and 2, potentially 3 more damage going to come through if this Pendelhaven connects with one of these creatures. We got a Brainstorm in response from John. And that looks like the final 2 Infect. So apparently there was already some poison on the board up at the top of the screen there. That was actually pretty clear in hindsight. It was a 5 and a 3 plus 2 would be 10. So that makes perfect sense as we're moving on to the next game. So Teferi not cleared, but the player gets cleared instead. Not taking a turn off to try and get rid of that Teferi. So these matches are actually recorded probably 2 weeks ago. I think we got about 2 weeks of videos in the queue, and Ponder leading out for John. So as of recording this commentary, we have seen some departures from the format. Dreadhorde Arcanist, Oko, and Arkham's Astrolabe. So based off of the basic island, Oko might be the only card that could show up here that we might not expect to see moving forward. Stoneforge Mystic, finding Umezawa's Jite, which is an absolute blowout card versus Infect. Everything in the deck dies to Jite. It gets 2 counters on there, which is just becomes insurmountable. And Heather's got 3 different Infect creatures here now. Blighted Agent along with an Inkmoth Nexus. Nexus, among the best options for Infect when you're looking at control decks. Just the fact that on your opponent's turn, it is a land instead of a creature, just makes it harder to contend with. You can also crop rotate for it. There are some decks that aren't as worried about Inkmoth Nexus, like a Rug Delver strategy. The fact that they can also answer it with Wasteland takes a lot of the shine off of that card, but just general control strategies typically aren't playing that playset of Wastelands. It's more of a tempo card in Legacy. Occasional prison strategies as well, but not so much with general control. And sending with just the Blighted Agent. Keeping back the Inkmoth Nexus. which is a little surprising. Umezawa's Jite comes in. Now, Inkmoth Nexus could potentially block and then get crop rotated out to avoid getting counters on here. There are some tricks that may be available. And, yeah, but I'm not sure. I can't think of a reason to block with Glistener Elf there. No, I cannot. It would make sense if the card got confused with Sword of Fire and Ice, thinking that it has to connect to a player. But I can't really see a reason to lose the card just over saving 1 point of life. Blighted Agent turns sideways. And there's going to be some pumping. And now is not actually the time where you want to be doing these pumps. You actually want to kill them on your own turn. And we have a Force of Negation on Invigorate. But if there's another pump spell in here, this is going to be just an absolute disaster. And Vines of Vastwood with a Force of Will. Whew, that was playing with fire right there. That was playing with fire. So counters removed to kill the Blighted Agent. Had to double Force of Will in order to ensure that the creature's actually dead. Now, if you just throw out a pump, if you just throw a -1/-1 on your turn, even if they have the Invigorate, like, you don't actually care. Like, that's totally fine. Like, who cares about them pumping the creature on your turn? Teferi shows up, bounces Blighted Agent, and it looks like this game will likely go to John from here. How they're picking up the first game and brainstorming. Inkmoth stands up. Teferi gets cleared. Another Inkmoth joins, along with the Blighted Agent, and going wide here with threats. Oh, and a back to basics. Oof. That is devastating. Just one of the better back to basics I've seen. Locking down all 5 lands, but the fact that it also shuts down a couple of Inkmoth Nexuses is truly savage. Heather fetching. Windswept Heath and Verdant Catacombs. It looks like, or is that Polluted Delta? I think that's Polluted Delta. Still grabbing non-basics. And a Brainstorm with the fetch. Or maybe it's a Watery Grave? It looks black and blue from here. I can't quite tell. It may in fact be a Watery Grave. That is so many tapped lands, and now Stoneforge Mystic grabbing a sword, I believe of Fire and Ice. And this is just going to get more and more out of control for John. But it was close. I mean, that was super dangerous. Using the Jite on Heather's turn gives just additional utility to the pump spells. If you want to burn a couple of Invigorates to keep your 1/1 around, I am totally fine with that. Especially given that the Jite's still there, and you're going to get the counters on the very next turn anyways. It's not like you fight the battle and then it just sticks around. And at that point, John has 2 counter spells left in his hand. Doesn't have to use them to fight over the Invigorates or Vines of Vastwood. So while I expect him to get this, we'll see if he's able to get the next one or not. Sword of Fire and Ice. equipping. And now Heather packing it in, as that was, at a certain point, Infect is out of options. It is not generally worth it. I mean, it depends on the amount of time in the round. I mean, these are weekly tournaments, pretty friendly, pretty casual, so to speak. I mean, we definitely see people trying to make the best plays that they can, but tournament considerations aren't precisely the same as if you were playing at a GP or something. With Infect, if you were playing at a high stakes event versus something like Stoneblade, you'd probably have it would serve you well to have a good idea of exactly how much time you want to have in a round optimally for each matchup, and potentially allow the game to continue so you're in that realm. Now, you can't slow play, you can't stall, but if your opponent's going to take another 5 minutes to beat you, even playing at a breakneck pace, whether or not you make them do that or not is totally your discretion. And as an Infect player, it may be in your favor to not have those extra 5 minutes on the clock going into the final game. If you can put yourself in a situation where you're going to either win or draw that last game, that can be the difference in between staying live for the top 8 or just taking your second loss and being bumped out. So those free roll situations can be really important. We don't really see that in our structure here because we're not cutting to top 8. There's really not nearly as much incentive to do that. And also the tiebreakers in our system are kind of non-existent. You get a prize share for going X and 1. You get 2 prize shares for going undefeated. So it's really not as much of an incentive to try and end up in a better position with tiebreakers, for example. And, half the time, if you're not going to finish X and 1 or better, if you've already taken a loss, that option is not on the table. So Heather leading out Tropical Island into Glistener Elf. Prismatic Vista. Such a great new addition to Legacy, and like a non-controversial one. Like Astrolabe just got the boot. I thought it was a fine addition. Other people didn't. I don't really care very much. But Astrolabe, at the very least, can be said to be controversial, whereas Prismatic Vista, nobody seems to have any ire about that card at all. Just another quality fetch land. Getting those basics. And now they don't have to be snow basics. Strategically, there's not as much incentive to be playing snow basics over regular basics, so people will kind of have more artistic expression, more personal expression when it comes to choosing their cards. Noble Hierarch continues to provide value for Heather here, now tapping for mana for Ponder. Still going to get that Exalted trigger. And that's the thing about Infect. This game could be over right now. As interesting and back and forth as these games have been, Infect absolutely has it in its game plan to just blow your opponent out. So we've got a Swords to Plowshares getting Flusterstormed. That is a no sir. And that would have been fantastic if there was additional pumps there. Oh, that would have been gorgeous. So this is going to be 3 Stoneforge Mystic coming in. That Flusterstorm could have been really backbreaking if there was additional pump spells. Brainstorm for Heather. Fetch land on board. Brainstorm, very, very potent in Infect. One of the biggest issues that the deck faces is trying to find that right blend of creatures, pump spells, and counter magic. And Brainstorm can convert excess components from whatever category you don't need. Oh, and mana as well. Let's not forget about that. So, very useful in converting dead cards into literal game winners. but the clock is ticking as John has access to GT coming up. Nope, and he is back. All right, no need to skip. So we've got a scale up. That is going to turn this Glistener elf into a 6-power creature. Got a... I don't recognize that removal spell. I'm assuming it's some type of Swords or Path to Exile. Perhaps a Path to Exile? Did he just get a basic forest out of his deck? Heather may have. She may have just found a basic forest off of a path. And makes a land drop, so yeah, that's got to be a Path to Exile with art that I don't recognize. Heather has an Inkmoth Nexus, though, ready to continue. If John doesn't have -1/-1 counters, or counters that can give -1/-1, more precisely. They might be charge counters. I don't actually remember what they are. I guess let me know in the comments. I'll probably look it up out of curiosity after the video. But other people might be wondering what type of counters they are on Umezawa Jite. The +2/+2, the gain life, not really what it's about in this matchup, just about killing these tiny creatures. And yeah, John not actually getting down the Jite. So a couple more poison look like it's going to come across. Animated the Inkmoth. Respond to the trigger with the Pendelhaven, so it'll be 3 in total. So there's a pump effect on board with the Pendelhaven. So Heather's going to need a couple of pump effects to deal with this Jite. Let's see how this goes. Equipping. Looks like a fetch in response. And may have been a Force of Vigor getting Spell Pierced. 2 counters have arrived, and it is ice skating uphill from here. Inkmoth animates, sends. We've got a counter being removed, so that's going to be time for Pendelhaven. Another in response, Invigorate. And it looks like that might do it. It will. Oh, and absolutely brutal. Oh, is that actually not lethal here? Apparently not. I mean, it's barely... Looks like off-screen must have missed seeing Heather's total poison count for John. This should have been 5 poison, I believe. 5 poison counters. Inkmoth standing back up. And turning sideways. And a Vines of Vastwood. And it looks like Force of Will being shown, but not needed because the counter would be removed to kill the Inkmoth Nexus. So John taking that one down on the back of Umezawa's Jite's -1/-1, which is really probably the biggest nightmare for Infect in the format. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.